Today we got to talk to Brett Brier, home health pediatric man about town. So Brett we didn't talk about this, but he went to A&M. He has a degree in veterinary sciences. He's always kind of been his own guy. They started a healthcare service, home healthcare service, sold the service to concentrate on the software, focus on pediatrics. And he's really just kind of got a lot of good little nuggets of advice for, people that are trying to start or serial entrepreneurs.
Serial entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to put it. I like that, or I thought that it was very interesting when talking about almost developing a brand and going with Cub Hub
mm-hmm.
and creating that niche. And I think you've said this before, niches make riches.
Oh, yeah.
So you definitely see that come to life with his companies and what they do and kind of their take on things.
Yeah, I love the idea of I don't know if I love it for myself, but I love it for them of holding themselves accountable to, we're going to name it Cub Hub so we can't do anything but pediatric software, which was it's a super niche down thing to where he's almost, that's one of the things that you'll hear from great industrialists and entrepreneurs were kind of two things, which is I don't want competition. I'm not looking for it. I want an unfair advantage. I want to be in a place where no one can compete with me. And that's kind of what they did.
Yeah.
And they're building something that, can really take over that part of the market.
Yeah. And finding something that there is a need for and sticking to it and not straying from that, not getting too big for your britches, and really giving the time for those people who do need that software and not growing up and then kind of putting them to the wayside and moving on. It's
the bigger thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of keeping that focus in one spot. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. And I think it's also going to set them up in the future for when somebody else goes, why build a competitive, pediatric software solution when we can just buy that one?
Right.
So that's probably going to be a good looking exit for them at some point. Yeah. And then they can go do the Danish thing.
Yeah. They're collages.
It's a very, very much a Texas thing to do.
Yeah.
A lot of German influence there. So,
right.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get on with it. I hope you guys enjoy it. Today, we've got Brett Brier on our hands. He's, Brett, we met through our wives, but how long have we known each other?
Yeah. So, how long have you been married?
10 years, 12 years.
Okay.
Wait, cut that, Amelia. This is my 13th year of marital bliss.
Yeah, exactly. So, I guess we met when y'all were dating, and then, so I've known you somewhere in the 13 to 15 year mark, somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah.
And, I think during that time, so I think when we met, I was running Vivicare, which was my pediatric, home nursing company. And, that was my first official, my business, even though since I graduated college, I've been a 1099 guy. So I've kind of always been out on my own.
Yeah. By the way, your LinkedIn is sorely lacking in complete information. It's like you graduated and went off the grid for 5 years, and then all of a sudden you started a company. Yeah.
So that gets into my stance on social media, which is, I don't do it. And so at some point, somebody told me I have to have it. And I was like, well, then put it together. And so that's what you see.
That's what you see is what you get. And that's all you're going to get. I love it. That's fine. I do. I had a conversation earlier just about, social certainly has its pluses and minuses, and maybe more minuses than pluses.
Yeah, I think that it'd be naive of me to say that where business is concerned, it could not be a tremendous asset. I think that I am working with the team to try to build that up. I'm still holding out hope I can do that without having to be on it myself.
Yeah, I think there are plenty of people that do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all right. If people can write books without ever putting pen to paper or pressing a spacebar and anger, then I think you can probably get somebody to run your social for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Vivicare and like what was the point where you're like, hell yeah, this is a great idea. We're going to do this. Like, how did we get there?
Yeah. So, like I say, I was a 1099 sales guy, and my whole life I've kind of operated under this desire to own my own business. I mean, my dad will tell stories about when I was a kid and people would ask me, because my dad's a veterinarian, if I was going to be a veterinarian too. And I would always say, I don't know, but I'm going to own my own business. Like that was kind of how I answered people even as a kid before I probably even realized what that really meant or entailed. So I always kind of had my mind on that. And I would always kind of think, well, is there a business there? I never looked at it like I have to find the thing that nobody else has ever done and create that. I've always been a simpler, probably more path of least resistance person, where I'm like, what is an idea that is out there that people are doing that I can do and potentially execute on better than they can do? And so I have a partner both in my current business and in my nursing business. His name is Cole. And he worked for a company that did what we did at Vivicare at the national level. And both of us felt like we wanted to start a business together. So we had a lot of ideas. We threw a lot of ideas against the wall, scared our wives. We talked about opening a Danish place. We were going to start a funeral home. We had a lot of different ideas, but
hold on, wait a second. You were going to open a Danish shop, like a cafe?
So that was his idea. I've never wanted to be in the restaurant business. And so I said no to that pretty quick, but it was kind of like no idea is a bad idea. And we were constantly throwing ideas against the wall.
Yeah.
And so he thought, like how this was a long time ago, but you know how like there's been the cupcake craze and the popsicle craze and all of this. There was a time where he felt like that was going to be like the kolache or Danish was going to be kind of a craze. So we talked about that. That only lasted like 30 seconds, but we did discuss it.
There's a whole podcast in that, by the way, which we're going to skip over. But
yeah,
we'll as well as there is in the funeral home. As morbid as it sounds, it's
good business, and I stand by that. I would definitely. I'm still interested in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so. Anyway, that's kind of how the nursing thing came to be. Is he had done it, he had left and was doing other things, and we were both turning 30, and just kind of decided, I think we can do this. And we started calling people, asking around. The barrier to entry was fairly low from a financial standpoint, and I think a theme for my life, kind of professionally, if you will, but my wife would argue also recreationally, is I have a fairly morbidly high risk tolerance.
Yeah.
And and so none of that ever scares me. The things that scare me are funny. It's like I have a fear of failure, like I think everybody has, but my fear of failure is not having to walk it back with friends or family or the embarrassment of it. It's having to put my resume together and put myself out there in like a normal quote unquote job thing is like, that's to me the scariest thing about adulting.
Yeah, no, I think there's some real stuff in that. You mean that's kind of part of, I think that's part of what drives some of this is that what would scare me the most is having to put somebody else's jersey on and go to, go over there to almost be like admitting defeat.
Right.
Is going and doing that. And that's a tough thing to swallow. So, all right. So what was it about Vivicare that you guys looked at it and you go, okay, this is how it's going to be a little bit different. Like there's a wave, we're going to ride it, but here's how we're going to ride it. That's going to be a little bit different. And how that, like what worked out of those initial ideas, and then what didn't work? Like, what were some of the things that you were like, yeah, this is going to be awesome, and it wasn't?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that we did, or we felt, and some of it, we probably felt like we were leaders in it more than we actually were. Maybe we just executed on it a little better, but other people were attempting it. But we both kind of have built our businesses under the philosophy of incentives matter.
Mm-hmm.
And in that business in particular, we felt like all the incentives were around the patient and the patient families. And obviously that's a critical component of it. You can't have the business without the patients, but we viewed it as we had 3 customers and the patients were one of those, but the caregivers and the payers were also clients. And we kind of approached them in that same mentality of, we have to earn their business like you do the patient's business. And I think that set us apart fairly quickly. People wanted to work for us. We were cool, if you will. We weren't doing the same like corporate structure of things. We were back to our risk tolerance, probably loose with HR and loose with some of these things, almost in a risky way.
Yeah.
But in a way that people seem to really like. We also we've just always approached all of these things through this optimism and honesty, where if we're honest and we're just straight with people, then things will work out for the best, because people are so used to being told what they want to hear, and that's not necessarily always the truth. And ultimately it comes around. And for us, we were able to do that. And so people, I think, would say they notice that difference pretty much straight away.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's those little simple things, I think, that make a huge difference, right?
Yeah. I think that it's funny because it's kind of those butterfly in the stomach conversations that I'm talking about, where it's like, man, I don't want to have this conversation. It's not going to go well. And you just kind of dread it. But then the moment you have it, you just have this huge sense of relief. And there's a lot of those conversations in business, whether it's with your employees or with your clientele or any of these things, that we just found that if we approached it that way, ultimately it would be better, even if it stung on the front end.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing we learned the most is it's never as bad as what you think it's going to be. That conversation.
Exactly.
And now sometimes you're going to have somebody that acts irrationally, and but that's the 1 out of 100. And
yeah,
typically people are really appreciative, I think, or just like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize that was happening. Let me figure out how to take care of that for you.
Yeah. And then I think the second part of your question was like, what didn't work out? I think we had aspirations to take over the world, right? Where we would come in and the way we did things and the way we operated would really revolutionize the industry, not just our company, but it would drive change amongst our competitors. It would drive change amongst payers. It would drive change in all of these different ways. And we didn't achieve that. Maybe we made a dent here or there. Maybe we didn't, but that was certainly an aspiration that probably we had to give up.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes to the whole idea of like goal setting, right? If you set your goals so small that you can't, and you achieve this tiny little goal, that's one thing. But if you set these really big goals and you don't even reach them, but you get halfway there, that's way better than those little goals you would have made.
Right. Yeah. I always feel like goals, they have the acronym of like, it has to be attainable and measurable and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
all the
SMART goals.
The books that you read on that stuff, or people read, not necessarily me, but they, I think that you need a mix of that, right? If you're not reaching for the stars to some extent, then what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, I think, I don't know if you ever saw, Silicon Valley on HBO. Such a great show. But I think, and they went to some, tech conference deal where everybody was presenting, and their goal was always, oh, and to change the world. Right? Like it was always this additional, like, and also to change the world.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I'm going to end world hunger.
That's quite literally. Yes, that was it. So, I just got a notification. I forgot to turn them off ahead of time. I don't know. They'll either be in this. There'll be some random dings in here. There won't be, so we'll just move on. So then you ended up building something really. I mean, 9 years is a long time, and it's not a long time, right? Which is how long Vivicare was around. And then what was the point where where you guys decided, okay, we're going to, and you did sell the business, correct?
We did. We exited in 2018.
Yeah. So at what point did you say, okay, we're going to sell it? How did that all come to fruition? Like, what was that?
Yeah. So I guess I would say when we started Vivicare, I don't know that I understood enough about business to say exiting is the idea. Yeah. I just kind of thought, well, I'll build this business and this is what I'll do. This will be my thing. Once you get into it, you kind of see other opportunities and other things that are out there. But we started our software business like in 2014. We needed software to run our business. There was nothing out there that was built for our business. There were systems out there that people were using that were built for other things that people were making work. And I think we were still cocky and dumb enough that we thought, well, we'll just build it. It can't be that hard. Right. And turns out it's really hard and super expensive. Yeah. But so we set out to build a software to run our business. And in doing so, really kind of fell in love with that aspect of it. Not so much from the standpoint of the work was more fun, even though sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It was more, we can really impact the industry at a higher level if we're working with more people than just what our company can do. Mm-hmm. The second piece of it was we knew what we needed to do in our nursing business or services business, whatever you want to call it, to scale it. But all of that stuff takes money, and we were using all of our money that we could use to scale to build software. Because as I mentioned, it's way more expensive than we thought it was going to be. Yep. And so we kind of hit this point where we needed to either double down our investment on our services business, which would have negatively impacted the software, or double down on the software and exit out of the services business. And so we made the decision at that point to open ourselves up for acquisition on the services side so that we could leverage all of that for the software.
Yeah, which that kind of sounds like a similar story, right? You start a business plan to go in one direction, and then all of a sudden you're like, but wait, there's this thing over here that we had no intention of ever doing, and you went all in on it. So is this how Vivicare led to Cub Hub? Is this what the transition was there?
Yeah, so this was how it happened. So we were rocking along on our services business. We were building out the software. We had kind of market tested the software and realized there was a real need for it, mm-hmm. and started softly marketing it in 2016, like started taking on some clients and dealing with all of those issues that come with trying to scale through that and how it worked for our business, but doesn't work for theirs. People bigger than us, smaller than us, doing different service lines and hashing all of that out. And so it just kind of kept becoming apparent that we were either going to have to bring somebody in on the software side that could help us, or we were going to have to just go all in on it.
Yeah. So which one did you do?
We went all in.
Okay.
So we sold the services business. I remember vividly, like, the checks hit the bank and we went to have a beer to celebrate and called and hired our CTO, and that's where we really launched from there.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't realize, obviously I knew about the two companies, but I didn't realize they were that interconnected and that it happened that quickly from one to the next.
Yeah, it was by the time we exited the services business, I would say Cole and I were spending over 80% of our time just on software.
Okay. All right. So that's probably a faster transition than most people, when they exit, they don't always have a plan, or
Right.
maybe didn't even expect to exit at the time, but then all of a sudden it's like y'all were there. I mean, it was a daisy chain.
Yeah, I think that without it, we probably so it's one of those deals where the services side of things is a very segmented business, and the acquisition market is pretty hot all the time. There's always acquisition stuff going on. So we got calls weekly for people wanting to buy us, and we just ignored them.
Yeah.
And so we just started answering and having cups of coffee with people once we decided it was time.
That was going to be part of what was going to happen. Okay. So you're almost like so CubHub then starts right after, which is all software based, same industry, still same, home health services.
Mm-hmm.
But you even niched down when you did the software. Talk about like the idea of kind of how you wanted to do that and why what's worked there and how you.
Yeah. So our services business was a pediatric specific business.
Okay.
So pediatric home care, which is a very niche business within the pediatric market. Most people, when they think of home care, think of, somebody to come to grandma's house a couple days a week and do chores or, help with the meds or whatever. What we did in our pediatric business was a lot different. It's what they call extended hourly. So we're there, our caregivers are there for 8 to 12-hour shifts. Sometimes we're there around the clock, 7 days a week. These are real high acuity kiddos. So these are patients that are on ventilators and trachs. So it's like little NICUs running inside each house. And the software side of it is really, so in the software world, it's called an EMR, electronic medical record. And that really needs to house all of the clinical information, but also be able to handle that back office admin pieces with regards to HR, scheduling, hiring, billing, payroll, all of those pieces. And the reason that nothing is built specifically for that is because of the niche nature of the market. There are 30 Medicare companies for every pediatric company that's out there. And so when you just think of market size, if you're building a business, you want the biggest market you can go into. And so everything was built for the big markets and then offered the workarounds for the PD side. We kind of took a different approach, which was, we're going to focus exclusively on this and we're just going to own pediatrics. Yes, it's a smaller pie, but we're just going to take a bigger share of it. Yeah. And have really continued to double down on that, and still today are the only system that's built specifically on that platform and exclusively focuses on it.
Okay. So what's the timeline since you started working on the software to today? How long ago did that?
Yeah. So from the time we really first started is where it was more than just an idea of maybe we should do this. It's probably 2014 to now. So it's been almost 10 years, but I would say really 2018 to now. So almost, I guess, 5 years. It was 5 years in August is when that's all I've been doing, and everything my whole professional side of things is focused on that.
Yeah. I mean, again, in the grand scheme of things, is not really that long, but I still think the fact that you're the only 100% focused pediatric, EMR system is still kind of amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to us. I mean, we keep waiting to just get a Google alert or hear from somebody that somebody's coming out to compete with us in that way. We fully expect it. But to this point, I mean, there's other people in the marketplace. Don't get me wrong. There are competitors we have that have built pediatric sides to their platform, but they're not solely focused on it in the way we are.
Yeah.
And software is one of those things that, it's built on a foundation and you're somewhat limited to that. So I always use the analogy of like remodeling a house versus building a house from scratch. If you're taking a software platform that's built for one thing and adding something else on, you are limited to the structure that's already in place. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're building it on an empty lot, you can kind of do what you want. And so our foundation is different, which really just makes us more nimble. And so I don't know if that's why, or if there's just not enough money for these people that are backed by big, investment groups, where they're like, well, we don't want to do that. We want the big dollars. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it goes back to the original thing you said, right? Building software is way harder and way more expensive.
Exactly.
And even though it's not a big secret that being niche and picking a market and sticking to that market is oftentimes the best way to go. It allows you not only to build something like, very custom and specific for that person, but it serves their needs in a way that they're just not going to get anywhere else. But even in some of those cases, it's just hard to say, okay, we only want, 20% of this otherwise gigantic market.
Right.
I think it's a hard thing to do.
It's a hard thing to do. And that's part of why we named it Cub Hub, to be honest, because we had other names, we were doing other things, but we wanted to hold ourselves accountable to it as well. And so kind of put a kid thing in the name to make it,
That's honestly, that's a pretty smart way to approach it, is holding yourself accountable to not going, well, what if we just kind of add this little scope creep over here and let it do that?
Exactly. Because it's not that much.
Market. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not that much if people are like, well, we also do this. Could you build this for us? Well, maybe, but we have to make sure we keep our eye on the prize.
Yeah.
Which we've gotten much, much better at over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
We used to be a lot more ADD about everything.
Well, I think that it's kind of when you're creative enough to want to start a Danish company, you sometimes get excited about shiny objects.
Exactly.
So now, 5 years dedicated, almost 10 years through the ideation of it. What kind of, what are some of the lessons you've learned in it, and what are the things that you're really excited about next in terms of growth and growth models and what you're planning?
Yeah. I think the two things just between both businesses I've had to learn and had to make the most improvement in is my patience and my ability to compartmentalize. Neither of those things come naturally to me. And so, to be the husband and father and friend and person I need to be outside of business time, which, as you know, when you own your own business, it's not really a 9 to 5 thing. It's just kind of like whatever's in front of you at whatever time.
Yep.
You have to be able to compartmentalize those things. You have to be able to have a terrible conversation or have something go terribly wrong and then turn around and help your kid with algebra homework, or go to dinner with the fam, or go to the kids' games, or whatever it is, and not let on that the sky is falling around you otherwise. And then with regards to patience, I think that, I don't know if it's unique to me or this is universal across all entrepreneurs, but it certainly is, of all the ones I've ever talked to, is that nothing ever happens as fast as we want it to happen, whether that's closing a deal or getting something ready or growing or doing any of those things. It all takes longer than we think it should in our head and how we have it drawn up. And to keep grinding when something takes 6 months longer than you feel like it should have, or you've had the same conversation 10 times, those are the things I think I've had to grow the most in.
Yeah.
And then I think along with that becomes this, I've had to get way better at making sure people understand my expectations. Primarily, I'm talking about our employees with that, but I can't just assume that because this is how I would have handled something or what I would have done, that they know that intuitively. I need to make sure they understand what it is I want to accomplish.
Yeah. I think that's universal. I think all those things are normal. And, I think you touched on it a little bit, but it's also that, that it's good for the client that you're about to go talk to, right? Like you see everything about how it's going to help them and benefit them, but it just takes them so long to get there. You kind of want to shake them. You're like, what?
Right.
Why? What?
Yeah.
Why can't we get to the end goal at this point? Why are we still having the first conversation?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then I think the second part of that, you said something about where do I see it going, or what was
Yeah.
the second part of that?
Well, yeah. So, like, what are the growth? It seems like by the way, I have a habit of asking you two questions at once.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. So the second part was growth wise. Like, what are you excited about next, and what do you see the opportunities for you in terms of the next steps about how you're going to accelerate your market, penetration?
Yeah, so I think that to your earlier point of it hasn't been that long. We're still we're a fairly young organization. I think that what I'm excited about is what we've built to this point has really set us up for moving forward in a way that we can truly scale each department. So some of it we learned in our first business. Some of it we wanted to accomplish. We knew we needed to do it in the last business. It just didn't work out for whatever reason. Some of it is emulating what we did there. But really having the foundation of everything built to where we can take each department, and whether that's support or business development or account management or the dev side of things. And we really do have things at a point where we can truly start scaling those operations in a way that will build a machine that that is scalable and replicatable and will be efficient. And so I'm excited for that challenge. It's not something I've done at this level before with regards to I probably had this many or more employees when I had my services business, but we weren't um, we weren't segmented in that same way. It was more just like the clinical side and the non-clinical side. This is really a lot of different segments of business, and trying to bring in people that are not necessarily from our internal network that know us for years and years. And so we can just hit the ground running all of those things, and people just expect things from us because they know who we are. But we're bringing in people that don't know us at all and able to bring them up to speed and get them going and make them successful. That's really what I'm looking forward to over the next couple of years.
Okay, that's a lot though.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a lot, but I think that it's important to continue to add those challenges, at least for somebody like me who, the thing I like least about any job is doing the same thing over and over. Yeah. I kind of constantly need new stuff. And I think I learned that through the services business, where people always ask me, like, are you glad you sold it? And I always tell them I have no regrets. And it's not because I've made enough money to go buy an island. I did not. But it's more because I think what I like to do is I like to start stuff. I like to start it. I like to get it going, and I like to get it to a point where it is more than just operational, but it is sustainable. And then I'm kind of ready for the new thing. Yeah. And so I think that having a company now where I'm able to not have to leave this company to do that is exciting to me, to be able to have those same challenges, but within my current organization.
Yeah. Yeah, the plateaus that you hit essentially in your company, right. Like, okay, well, we've got it here, but if we want to get it there, then right. You're almost rebuilding the organization from the inside.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Well, so I guess outside of that, have you started anything else? You got any other ideas that are been creeping around in your head?
So, I mean, I have a side business of hard money lending, which you kind of mentioned a little bit in the intro. Probably don't have time to get into all that. That's more of just something to do. I think that at some point maybe it becomes something, but right now I don't focus on it too much. I think in a perfect world, if I could write my own script, which I don't necessarily believe in, but if I could, I think that this current business would put me in a place, whether it's through just the way the business continues to run or through an exit of it, that I can find something to do that is less about trying to create a company that dominates a market and more, what can I do to give back in some way? Whether that is to use the skills and talents and resources that I have to help an organization that is trying to become what we did, or it is to build something new from scratch, or it's to join or start a program that teaches people some of these things that we've had to learn the hard way, such as how to deal with all the different accounting aspects of owning a business or the economics of it, or to go through an acquisition or these different things. I don't know where all that lands, and I don't know. It's something that does occupy a spot in my mind, but right now I think it's probably somewhere between 3 and 5 years out. And so it's kind of one of those things that I do spend some time thinking about, but it's certainly not fleshed out yet.
Yeah, no, I like that. I was listening to another podcast, which I should name, but I can't remember the name of right now, but they focus on, 3 aspects of the interview. And the last part of it is, how are you giving back? Right. It's like, how are you making money? How are you investing money? And then how are you giving back? And I really, really like that. And I think there's a lot in there that's a challenge in and of itself, because typically you'll find, I don't want to say typically, and that's not fair. What I've found in a lot of cases is organizations that are built around being a nonprofit or helping serve another part of the human race, is that they're not really run like businesses very well, even though they should be. And while their heart's in the right place, a lot of the other stuff is not in the right place, and it becomes a really big challenge to figure out how to help. Or, I love small businesses. I love entrepreneurs that start stuff, and I just think it's such a cool place to be. But it's hard to help in a lot of cases, and you kind of just got to let them do their own journey sometimes.
Right. No, I think that's getting into where that comes from, is it's, whether it's been a success or a failure. I think that it's more just, to your point, there's a lot of people out there that are doing a lot of really good things in this world, way better than I'm doing any given day. But those aren't necessarily the people that are equipped to deal with some harsh realities of the world. And maybe that's my role, is to come in and be the guy that lacks empathy altogether. And that's what that organization lacks. Yeah. And I can do that.
If people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you? Where can they hunt you down in your non-existing social media?
Right. So I do have a LinkedIn page, as minimalist as it may be. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can always find me at Venmo if you want to send me some money. And then I'm at our website is cubhub.io, and my email is there, but my email is just brett@cubhub.io. So.
Well, thank you for spending the time today. This has been awesome catching up. And obviously, even though we've known each other for just shy of 15 years, I learned stuff today that I didn't know about you. So
okay, well, awesome. No, it's been good. Thanks for having me.
Yep, time well served. All right, man. Thank you.